Alright, my talk is going to be on God's will, and basically I'm just going to go through it. It's going to be about God's will and then our free will and everything as well. First thing, and another thing is, there was no sources behind all this. This is just all mine, so it's going to be like 5 minutes long. First thing you must realize when talking about God's will is that He created us to know, love, and serve Him so that we can see Him in heaven. God would love to have every human being, in heaven, obviously. More the merrier, and more saints too. So the first angels, for instance, had free will. God gave it to them. He also gave them angelic power and great knowledge. Since they had free will, the angels had a choice to make, to remain faithful to God or to disobey Him, and obviously we know what happened to them. Just like Adam and Eve, they had free will and were tempted by the devil and failed to resist. The only thing we can do whenever we don't know how things are going to turn out is, just to pray about it. You have to pray for God's will, and everything should turn out. We all have to make decisions in life, and it's those decisions that can change your life, whether it be good or bad. Depends on the choices you make. I guess you could say that the more one unites his will with the divine will, the greater will be his love for God. So you got mortification, meditation, receiving Holy Communion, acts of charity are all pleasing to God, but only when they're in agreement with His will. Like Holy Communion, God wants us to receive Him, and we should as much as possible. It's His will that we, go to communion as often as possible. And He would look upon, that greatly, because it's His will. But what would not be God's will would be receiving Him with a mortal sin on our soul, like a sacrilege. That's not how it's supposed to happen. So you just, go to confession first. If you can, Our Lord declared in the Gospels that He had come on earth not to do His own will, but solely that of His Father, in John 6. I came down from heaven not to do my own will, but the will of Him that sent me. The saints constantly gazed upon this and made it their goal to do God's will. And Augustine said about God's will, "There's nothing more pleasing we can offer God than to say to Him, 'Possess thyself of us.' There's nothing more we can do than to give our entire will to God." Now, obviously, nowadays it may be a little harder, with all the distractions in the world, but that doesn't mean, we can't try our very hardest, and only God knows to what extent we really want to do His divine will. Blessed Virgin Mary is a perfect model to look at when seeing the will of God in action, saying "Thy will be done." Now it can make your life miserable too, it may. Just, that's why you have to pray for it. Like men who, they are called to the priesthood, or women to be a nun. That's why it's so important to pray for as well, so you don't make a mistake or waste time in doing something else when God has something planned for you already. If we were ever sick or something bad had happened to a friend or something of the sort, we should say, "Lord, I wish neither to be well nor to remain sick," or if the person that I loved was meant to die or just hurt or something, "I want only what Thou wilt." We should, without ever feeling bad, whatever happens, accept His will, for He knows us better than we know ourselves. He knows before we were born. He knows what's best for us, and in the end, it will all fall into place.